Right. I think we're live, finally. Sorry, got a couple people in here already. I'm not really running behind. I just got this set up a little bit early. It shows up a little bit early, and a couple people joined a little bit early. So we'll get right into it. All right, so again, this is a weekly live broadcast. If you don't know already, it's pretty much every Thursday evening, 7 o'clock Central. If, unless something gets in the way, sometimes I can't make it to the live broadcast, something life-wide, means 7 o'clock to join. Don't have any topic, no, whatever you want to ask. Right, hopefully we're still going. There we go. Okay. So again, don't spam us with your comments. If you see me answer a comment that came in way after yours, then go ahead and ask again. Be family friendly, be polite, don't be rude. We'll kick you out if we have to. But other than that, just about anything goes. So, all right, let's jump right in. We got a couple of questions here. First one comes from MS Bideth, I think it is. Bideth. I'm not sure how to pronounce your username, but it says, hey, everyone, what seems to be the single most respected reason quail will not lay much? A new male, inadequate diet. I'm doing everything right, I thought, and getting only 3 a day from 19 hens. There could be a number of different reasons for that. The biggest things that determine whether the hen will lay consistently or not is the amount of light that they're getting. They need 14 hours a day of light, and stress factors. So if you've recently added a lot of new birds to them, then that definitely, or even, a new male, that could add some stress depending on, well, you've got 19 hens, you added 1 male. That shouldn't add that much stress. I wouldn't think that would make a big difference on that. I don't know how old these birds are, so if they're just at 10 weeks old or something like that, they're just getting started laying. So give them a little bit of time, they'll pick up. But if you move your birds around a lot, like move them to a new cage or something like that, that's a stress factor on them, and that will definitely get them to stop laying usually for about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks at the most, or at least really inconsistently lay. So those are the big things that really affect whether your birds are laying eggs or not. Stress factors, light. It could be inadequate feed, but as long as you're feeding a quail diet, a game bird feed, or a turkey starter or something like that, it's probably going to be just fine. It's probably not the diet. It probably has more to do, again, with either the amount of light or the stress factors, or they're just coming of age, and you just got to be patient and give them a little bit of time. Sometimes it takes them a couple of weeks when they start laying to really get laying consistently. So just give them a little bit of time. They'll probably pick right up. It's probably nothing to worry about. Just got to be patient, unfortunately. All right, Marie says, hey, Chris, what ivermectin, I think is what you're talking about. Ivermectin do you use on quail? I don't personally use it on my birds. I've never had a reason to. I don't have any birds that have obvious signs of mites or parasites or any of those kinds of things. So I don't use it on my birds at all. But if you are going to get one, I would get a water-soluble one. If you need to treat your birds, you probably don't need to unless, again, you've got some kind of obvious parasite, mites, something like that you need to treat for. I wouldn't do it as a preventative measure. Just wait till you have a problem and then treat for the problem. If you do need to treat, though, there is not water soluble, but drops, liquid ivermectin, and you would probably just need just a drop or two in each one's mouth, and that's going to be just fine. That's going to be plenty. And get whatever is good for poultry or whatever. It's going to be like 1% ivermectin or something like that. Hopefully that answers that question for you. Again, I don't really use it, but if you need to, you can do it. Definitely, it's fine to use with quail, just like you would with chickens. Just, you can, like I said, just a drop in their mouth, and that should be all they need. All right, New Mexico Dust Bunnies. Hi, everyone. I had a doe break a divider and go after the other doe. Tried to castrate her, missed her vital bit, but got her just underneath it and left an open wound. I went to the feed store for antibiotics, but they said there's something going on, and we're not able to get them anymore. And some of the prescriptions they used to get are now by vet prescription only, things like penicillin. And then it goes on to say, I don't know what to do for her other than Neosporin on it. She keeps it clean, but you can see her insides, I think. It could be just the space between the skin and the muscles. I hope she makes it. Yeah, hopefully that's all it is, too. Hopefully, it's hard to say exactly without seeing how bad the wound is. Neosporin's fine to use on it. Don't use one with pain reliever in it. Pain reliever can be toxic to your two animals. So you don't want to use one with a pain reliever in it. You want to use one that doesn't have a pain reliever. Whether it's Neosporin or any kind of triple antibiotic ointment, any of those things are fine to use on it. You may have to put like a cone on her, like you would a dog, to keep her from licking it. She's going to probably want to lick it all the time, like you said, to keep it clean. Which is good that she's keeping it clean, but at the same time, it's bad because she's probably just irritating it more and more and more. So you may have to put something on her where she can't get to it to clean it, and that way, just like a cone, like you would put on a dog, and that way it has a chance to heal. You could try covering it, but again, if you put a cone on her, you might want to cover it with some gauze pads or something. But again, don't do that if she can get to it, because she'll just peel them off and chew on them and those kinds of things. Chances are she'll heal up just fine. They're remarkably adaptive and remarkably well equipped to be able to heal from some pretty nasty wounds. Just keep an eye on it. Make sure that it stays fairly clean. That's why a gauze pad would be a good idea to put over it. And just watch for infections. If it turns red, starts getting pussy, any of those kinds of things, then you may have to. If you really want to save her, you may have to go to a vet, which is going to be incredibly expensive probably. But that's about the only suggestions I have. Chances are she's going to be fine as long as you can keep it clean. So those are my suggestions for that. I think hopefully she makes it too. Sounds pretty nasty, and sorry you're having to deal with that. Hey, there's Bubba from North Carolina. Good to see you again. Jupiter, good to see you. Says, hi all. We are at war with the backyard raccoons. Last night, they learned how to reach into the quail hutch and their nasty hands and rip apart a bird. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry to hear that. I don't know how many raccoons you got, but that can definitely be a problem. You might check with your local conservation department. A lot of times they'll loan out live traps, and you can just live trap them and transport them to a wildlife area or something like that, so they're not getting into yours. Other than that, electric wire, that's a good deterrent. If you can put a string of electric wire around your hutches, about the height of a raccoon, so they can't go under it, and as long as they don't have a way to go over it, of course, like a tree nearby that they can climb over and down onto your hutches, that can work pretty well too. If you want to make it even more effective, take some aluminum foil, just a little thin strip of it, smear some peanut butter on it, fold it over that electric wire about every 2 feet or so, 3 feet around it, and they'll come up, they'll smell that peanut butter, go for that peanut butter on that aluminum foil, and get bound, hit by that electric wire, and they'll probably leave them alone at that point. But those are my two best suggestions for taking care of predators on your animals. Again, check with your conservation department. Ours around here will loan out live traps, and there's plenty of places around here you could go take them and release them somewhere. All right. Good evening to you, Fred. Good to see you. Never End Creative says, hello. What's your opinion on raising quail in a tractor? I've got a tractor small enough and it has 1/2 inch wire mesh around it. I don't think it's a bad idea at all. In fact, I've thought about trying it out myself. I haven't done it, but I think it could work really, really well. You may have to worry about making sure there's wire on the bottom of it as well. You may not. Yeah, that may not be a big issue, but if you have something that can dig under it, then that could be a problem. We had the chicken tractor out here with the meat chickens in it. They're all processed now, so it's not being used right now. But still, one day we had a couple of stray dogs come by, decided they wanted in those chickens, and they started digging around the edges of that tractor to get to them. And they dug a trench that deep before I could get out there and run them off. And so anyway, it doesn't take long for an animal that can dig really well, like a fox or something like that, to dig underneath the hutch. So you may have to put wire on the bottom of it to keep that from happening, or run a string of electric wire around it, one or the other. But yeah, I don't think there's any problem with it. I think they'd probably enjoy being in a tractor. I've thought about trying it out, and I may still at some point. I don't know yet. All right. Excuse me. Ricky Kerbo says, had my best hatch, 30 out of 41 eggs. Awesome. Well done. Boris, hello to you, Boris. Good to see you. Good to see you, Melissa. Harton Creek Gardens, good evening all. Glad to catch another live one. Well, glad to have you here. Thanks for joining. All right, Matthew from Alberta, Canada, hello to you. Hey, Rhonda, good to see you. Salvador, good to see you too. Thanks for joining. All right, Rhonda says, my doe had her babies on the 19th, first litter, and had 11 kits, still all going well. Wow, that's really nice. 11 kits, that's a big litter. It's pretty common to lose one or two from a litter that's over about 9. So to have 11 and have them still going, you said on the 19th, that's 3 days, something like that. So that's pretty good. 4 days, I guess it is. So good job. Congratulations too, by the way. All right, Geyer Kiddick something Creations says, hi Chris, what determines the amount of hens that you get when you hatch eggs? Well, that's a question you're gonna have to ask God when you see him, because I have no idea. It's just, you'll hear rumors about like pointy end eggs or roosters and rounder eggs or hens, and the incubator temperature can change the sex of the birds, and none of that stuff's true. It is true that if you have, and I don't remember, I may be quoting this backwards, so don't quote me on this, but if your incubator temperature is slightly higher, it's more favorable for roosters, I think, to hatch. Slightly lower, maybe more favorable for hens. We're talking like a degree, it's not much. But it's not like it changes the sex of the birds. It just, it can cause like if you got a little bit higher, it's more favorable for roosters, so the hens don't hatch at all. They just die in the shell, basically. They just don't hatch. So there's nothing really you can do to create it or to control, whether you're going to get hens or roosters. It's just luck of the draw. And if you're lucky like me, then I usually get about like 65 to, well, probably more like 75 to 85% roosters, it seems like, on most hatches. But anyway, hopefully that helps. I know it's not what you wanted to hear. You wanted to hear some kind of trick to it, but there isn't one. It's just, that's just the way it is, unfortunately. All right. Sandra says, hi all from Connecticut. I raised my quail on a 10 by 12 mobile greenhouse, nice, with 1/2 inch hardware cloth around the foundation. I've only lost 3. Sounds like a nice setup. I'm jealous. If I had a big, like aviary style, like I could walk into, I'd raise my quail in there too. I think that'd be a nice environment for them. The only thing maybe to clean up, you'd have to clean it up fairly regularly, and hunting for eggs. It'd be like a Easter egg hunt every day. But other than that, I think it'd be a nice environment for them. All right, Melissa, day 32 for my doe says, would it be okay to put her in with the buck next week if she doesn't kindle? Yeah, give her a week. Day 40-ish, somewhere right around there. If she hasn't kindled yet, then yeah, definitely you can rebreed her at that point. All right, Danny says, hi Chris, just started with 13 birds about a month ago, set my first 26 eggs 2 weeks ago Monday, had 21 hatch out today. I watched your videos to research before I started. Thanks for all your info. Well, you're absolutely welcome. Thanks for watching the videos. So you're saying set your first 26 eggs 2 weeks ago on Monday and had 21 hatch. That's fantastic. 21 out of 26 eggs. Well done. You did a good job there. All right. James says, have you ever had issues with snakes getting into your quail hutch? Funny you asked that. I posted a video, was it last week, where I went fishing for the day, but I took you through my morning chores before I went, and I had a snake in the brooder box, and it had eaten 2 quail, I think it was, maybe 3. I really don't know. I think it was 2 though. It wasn't a very big snake. It was just a little black snake, a young one about that big. And, that's the only time I've ever really had a problem with it. The rest of the time, I've never had a snake, that I know of, get into my regular quail hutch. If they did, they weren't big enough to eat any birds. It'd take a pretty good sized snake to eat live, full grown adult birds. The chicks in the brooder box, it doesn't take a very big one, but these were like day old chicks, 2-day old chicks, something like that. So anyway, yeah, and snakes are not that big of a concern. I just caught him and took him out and let him go in the tree line. They're not like other predators that will come back time and time again, over and over and over again. Snakes pretty much eat like once a week, 2 weeks, something like that. If they have a big meal, like for that snake, it was 2 quail, I think is what he ate, and that was probably a big meal. He's probably not going to eat again for another couple of weeks, 2 weeks, maybe even 3, who knows. And by that time, he's going to be off somewhere else, who knows where. They don't just hang around in one area like a lot of other predators do. So it's not really a big concern. Unfortunately, you raise birds, you're going to have mice probably around, and mice draw snakes. So I don't mind having the snakes around. They can eat all the mice they want, keep my mice population down, hopefully. Anyway, I don't know if that was answers your question exactly, but yeah, that's the only time I've ever had a problem with snakes in the hutch. All right, Sandra says, birds in a YR. Let me read the rest of this. Maybe that'll make sense. And that was in my old setup off the ground. What are we... Oh, okay, that's a continuation of your other comment. Said you've only lost 3 in a year, and that was in your old setup off the ground. Okay, awesome. So your greenhouse, and then you go on to say something else here. My greenhouse is like a tractor. I also covered the base with hardware cloth. Sounds good. And it says, question, how are quail at eating whole grain? I'm considering a custom mix that's cheaper than when I can find near me regularly. Okay, I'm not necessarily an expert on this, but here's what I will say. Quail are omnivorous. They're not they're not vegetarians only. They're not what do you call it? Carnivores only. They're omnivorous. They need both insect, animal protein, from insects mostly, and grains and vegetables and those kinds of things too. So, yes, they can definitely eat some whole grain. You're probably going to need some grit for them if they do, but you need to do some research on that and make sure you're providing them with a complete nutritional diet for them. I don't know what the answer is to that, how much of everything to mix in with that. You could probably supplement something like catfish food or cat food or something like that, dried up, grind it up a little bit and mix it in with the whole grain and find a good mix for them, but I just don't know what that is exactly. So you're going to need to research that a little bit. And I'm sorry I don't have the exact information for you, but just know, again, that they need more than just grain to eat. They need insect, animal protein as well. All right, Marie says, thank you. I bought some quail that ended up being a very skinny, and now all my quail are skinny and watery poo, and I have some die. I was thinking they might be wormy. Oh no, that could be. It says, I'm in. Oh, that's somebody else. I'm sorry. I'll get there in a second, Mark. Okay. One thing I might be concerned about with that would be something like coccidiosis. It could be worms. It could be coccidiosis. Now you can treat that with ivermectin as well. Yeah, that's not good sounding anyway. There's a couple of different diseases that could cause symptoms like that. But if you're having some birds die, they're getting skinny, that would be my first concern, coccidiosis. Make sure you keep them away from all your other animals, although I think that is probably species specific, so they can't transport it or transmit it between like quail and rabbits or anything like that, but I don't know that for sure. So I would keep them isolated from your other ones. If you have one die and you can stomach it, we'll cut it open and check the liver. Check for white spots on the liver. If you have white spots on the liver, that's a good sign that it's coccidiosis, which is a parasite, by the way. So you could treat with ivermectin. That would probably help with that for sure. If it was me and I found coccidiosis in my birds, I think I would probably look at getting new birds and just process the whole flock, get rid of them, sterilize everything really, really good, and then just start over with new birds. That's just my opinion. I think once you get it in your flock, you're probably going to have a hard time getting rid of it. And chances are you'll never completely get rid of it. You might, knock it back enough to where it doesn't affect your birds. It tends to affect younger animals more than it does older animals. Older animals can live with it, and it's not that big of a deal for them. They can tolerate it. But me personally, I don't really want to. I know that the common knowledge is the meat's safe to eat. Don't eat the organs if they have that. I just don't personally like the idea of eating the meat either if I know they have some kind of parasite in them. So that's just my personal opinion on that. That's how I would probably handle it. But again, verify that that's what it is. It may be something entirely different. There may just be some kind of virus or something like that going on. So, all right. Mark says, I'm in. Anyone here help me? I am picking up some ring-necked pheasants. Can I keep them in a quail-sized cage? Granted, a lot less birds. I think ring-necked, if you're talking a quail-sized cage that's normally like 18 inches tall, that may be a little bit short for pheasants. They're pretty big birds. I'm not sure, I don't raise pheasants. I don't have any experience raising pheasants, so I couldn't tell you the optimal cage size for them. But I think they're going to need a bigger cage than that. And you probably want to look at something considerably bigger. They're pretty good sized birds. All right, Sandra, okay, got that one already. Robin says, hi, Chris and everyone from Michigan. How'd you know I was from Michigan? I probably said that before. Actually, I'm not. I'm from Southwest Missouri, but I was born in Michigan. But my parents were from Southwest Missouri, from where I live now. They moved to Michigan, had 2 kids, and then moved back. So we moved to Missouri when I was 2 years old. And I don't really have any memories of Michigan. I do vaguely remember moving to Missouri when I was a kid, but just vaguely. And so I'm from Missouri. But anyway, just play on your words there. All right, so you go on to say, I have some quail I have quails in a grow out cage. They are all from the same hatch. One quail has killed and another had half the head feathers ripped off and the eye pecked. So, you said the eye pecked, half the head and feathers ripped off. Oh no, half the head feathers picked off and ripped off one. Yeah, it sounds like you got a vicious bird in there. Every once in a while you get a bird that's just a bully. If you can identify which one it is, it's probably a hen. They tend to be a little bit more aggressive with the other birds than the roosters do. If you can identify which one it is, if it was me, I would call that one out and get it out of my flock. Be sure not to pass those genes on to other birds as you're breeding them and things like that. You should be able to watch them. You may have to stand back at a distance so they don't get freaked out by your presence. But you should be able to watch. You'll be able to identify the bird. It's probably just one, maybe two at the most that are just terrorizing the other birds and going after them. That's where I would start with, is see if you can identify it, get that bird out of the flock. That's about all I got to say, unfortunately. All right. Mark, oh, by the way, hi, all you beautiful people, and thanks for letting me in. Well, thanks for joining, Mark. Appreciate it. Rhonda says, yes, I told the kids we might lose a couple, so I'm happy they're doing well. She, the doe, can make me a liar if she wants to. LOL. Well, I'm happy they're doing well, too. All right, Rebecca says, I've had issues with raccoons in the past. If you live trap them, we learned it takes a good 30-mile trip to get out of their known area. The internet is a good place to find how far to rehome. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's probably a good suggestion. I don't know if it'd take completely 30 miles away or not. I mean, it depends on a couple of things. And you may be right, Rebecca. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I think it would depend on a couple of things. One, if they have babies nearby, then yeah, for sure, you're going to have to get them a long ways away because they'll have that drive to get back to their babies. But if there's enough food where you relocate them to, if there's if the environment's good and all that, then they're probably going to stay there. But still, your point's valid. You don't want to just take them down the block and let them go. You need to get them a little ways away anyway. Where I'm thinking is, there's a wildlife, public access, conservation department, public access. It's probably 10, 12 miles away, and I think I would take them there and probably release them there. But you may be right. You may be better off, depending on how many raccoons are in your area, they may be just a little overcrowded. So you may be better off just dealing with it yourself. And, well, you guys know where I'm going with that. All right, Mama Tried Homestead says, evening, folks. Good evening to you. Robin says, they are 9 weeks old. What are we talking about, Robin? Oh, there we go. Grow out. Okay, that's your birds that were beating each other up. Okay, they're 9 weeks old. They're in a 2 feet by 6 feet grow out cage. Does this mean that the chicks from this hatch are all prone to aggression? No, it doesn't mean that the chicks from that hatch are all going to be like that. It tends to be just one or two birds. Every once in a while you get one like that. It just happens. Right at 9 weeks is about the time it's going to happen too, because that's when they hit their sexual maturity, hormones kick in, and what you're having is probably a hen that's trying to establish pecking order. That's not a guarantee. Sometimes there can be roosters too, but I find that it tends to be hens more often than not. All right. Herman says, hey, Chris, you think I can breed a quail with a pheasant or a chicken? Just curious. No, you can't. You can't do that, no. Daniel said, well, here, let me back up. You can't do that. They're different species. Even if they would breed, they wouldn't produce young that were, if they did produce young, it would be mules. They would be sterile. They wouldn't be able to produce again. They're completely different species. That is the definition of a species, is being able to interbreed and produce viable young that can also reproduce. So no, it can't be done. I think it would be impossible for them to actually physically breed with them anyway, but even if they could, it wouldn't work. All right, Daniel says, hey, Chris, what would be a reasonable price for a trio of rabbits? Prices are all over the place. Yeah, it depends on what kind of rabbits you're getting, where you're getting them from. I don't know what the prices are in your area. Around here, I can get, decent rabbits usually for $10 a piece, something like that. If I go with young ones and I'm willing to wait for them to grow up, like I'm talking like 8 weeks, 10 week, maybe even 12-week-old rabbits. Sometimes I can get them for $5 or $6 a piece. But those are just, meat mutts, basically. I mean, they may say New Zealand whites, but they're not proven. There's not anything about them that says for sure that's what they are. They're not the absolute best. If I want to get good quality where, I'm confident that the babies are going to get to 5 pounds by 8 weeks, that's going to cost me probably $25 a rabbit, something like that. But again, it depends a little bit on your area, where you're at, how much. I mean, I wouldn't hesitate paying $30 a rabbit if I knew the bloodlines were really, really good. Even maybe $40 a rabbit. That's not out of the question if I know I'm getting fantastic bloodlines and there's, pedigrees or something that goes along with them that makes them great. Because you got to consider too, if that's what they go for sale, if you get those and you breed them, then you should theoretically be able to sell those babies for close to that much as well, and make a little bit of your money back in your feed costs and things. Hey, Jupiter, good to see you again. Says there will be no catch and release for these raccoons. This is war. Hey, I don't blame you. I'm going to war with squirrels right now. Got a video coming out about that Monday. All right. Sandra says eggs are easy to find. What are we talking about? Eggs are in your greenhouse. Okay, eggs are easy to find. I teach them to lay in enclosed sandboxes by giving them dry mealworms in the afternoon around 4 or 5. And if there is an oops, I move it. Okay, well, that makes sense. I don't know that there's a whole lot of teaching that you need to do. I mean, mine tend to lay in the sandboxes almost all the time anyway. I didn't teach them to do that. That's just where they prefer to lay. But yeah, that's a good idea. You put a dry sandbox in there, and yeah, that's going to probably be where they lay most of their eggs. So great idea. All right, Mama tried Homestead. I set 100 eggs and had 7 hatch. In a little giant incubator following all instructions. To say I'm disappointed is an understatement. Man, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, I'd be disappointed with that too. That doesn't sound like a good hatch rate at all. One thing I noticed early, and I did a video on this a couple of weeks ago, talking about figuring out my poor hatch rate, is my incubator was sitting right in front of a window and the blind was open. So in the afternoon, that sun was right through the window, right on the incubator. And, I didn't notice that for the longest time because I'm never home in the afternoon, like at that time. But I guarantee you, when I shut that blind and my hatch rate went right up through the roof. So make sure your incubator is set in an area that is fairly temperature stable. Don't put it right on top of an air conditioner vent or a heater vent or, right in a sunny window or something like that. And that might help out a lot. Other than that, if you haven't done it already, you might double check, get a couple of non-digital thermometers, calibrate them. Make sure to calibrate them first to make sure they're accurate. And put them in your incubator, and you can verify that it's, if 2 of those thermometers, the incubator being one of those, if 2 of them are all reading the same temperature, you can pretty much bet that's the same temperature. And you might find that your incubator's, maybe the thermostat's off and it's reading the temperature 2 degrees too low or 2 degrees too high or something like that, which can really affect your hatch rate. So those are the best suggestions I have for that. I'm sorry you had a bad hatch rate. Hang in there. I still get bad hatch rates every once in a while too. It just happens from time to time. Could be nothing like that. It could be who knows what. Maybe all the eggs weren't fertile. Who knows? There could be multiple things. But those are a couple things you can do to kind of troubleshoot it on your end. And hopefully your next one's much, much better. All right. Lauren says, you can't breed a quail and a pheasant. Yeah, I said that too, Lauren. I agree. Where are we at here? Vedran, hello from Croatia. Awesome. Thanks for joining. All right. Atia Ahmed says, wants a shout out. Well, here's your shout out. Good to see you. Thanks for joining. Rick says, 1 cinnamon on a stick and 6 cardamom pods in a gallon of water will work wonders. I don't know what we're talking about. I'm sorry, I'm lost on that. Robin says, I boiled quail eggs in water for the first time, boiled for 4 minutes. Why were most of the egg shells soft after boiling? Thank you. I've never really noticed that. Excuse me. I don't think, and 4 minutes is the right time to hard boil a quail egg. I mean, they're hard boiled in 4 minutes. I don't think I've ever noticed the eggshells being soft after boiling them. Did you put vinegar in the water maybe? A lot of times people put vinegar in the water when they hard-boiled eggs, and that could have been it. That may have eaten the outside eggshell off of that. I don't know if it's a problem or not. I don't know. Good question. That's the only thing I could think of. All right. DLN says, I have 15 hens, 11 weeks old, and I average about 11 to 12 eggs a day. Is that normal? And hi from Idaho. Well, hello to you too. That's not abnormal. If you got 15 hens, I would expect probably closer to 14 or 15 eggs a day. But, if you're averaging 11 to 12, that's not terrible. You may have a bird that lays one day and doesn't lay the next, lays the next day. I mean, 1 or 2 here or there. They're 11 weeks old, so they're just now, they're just between 8 to 12 weeks old. They're a little inconsistent with their laying sometimes. So they'll probably smooth out, and you'll start getting like 15 eggs a day here pretty quick. All right, quail cages would be too short. Too short. Oh, you're probably talking about for the pheasants. Yeah, I would think so too. All right, Evie says, hey Chris, how are you today from West Plains? awesome. That's not far from me. Well, it's a little ways, but still, Missouri. Was wondering, why do you say no, not WD-40? So many old timers I knew use it forever on rabbits. Yeah, well, WD-40, here's the reason I say don't use WD-40 on your rabbits, is it's chemical based. It's just, yeah, I know people have used it forever, but they used asbestos forever. It's just doesn't, just because they used it forever doesn't mean it's the best option, especially when something like olive oil works just fine. Just a couple of drops of olive oil in their ear once a day or twice a day, or once a day for about a week, and you're usually taking care of mites, no problem at all. And there's no adverse, they can eat it. It's not going to hurt them at all. So that's the biggest reason I say don't use it. It's just, I don't like putting chemicals on my animals if I don't have to, especially not animals I'm going to eat. All right, Eagle's Wing says Ponzaril, Marquise paste, or Amprolium Corid for coccidia. Ivermectin is not really suited for that. Oh, you know what? That's a good point. You're right. Amprolium Amprolium, I believe, is that a treatment for corid, or is that a preventative for corid? Or for coccidiosis, sorry. Coccidia. Good point. You're right. Ivermectin is not really the best solution for coccidia. Thank you for correcting me on that. Yeah, there's a couple of different options for it. Yeah, you might want to check into that and make sure that that's not what it is before you just go treating your birds. If you've had a couple of die, it should be pretty easy to check them out and see if that's what it looks like. All right, New Mexico Bunnies, Dust Bunny says, I have 2 rabbits with snuffles, I'm pretty sure. A buck that I was hoping to grow out and a nursing doe. In my research to home treat, I found out that it is an illness that is transmissible, there we go, to humans. It can be. Snuffles is kind of a generic term for lots of different things. It's usually bacterial, not always, but usually bacterial. You can treat with antibiotics. Sometimes you can cure it, sometimes you can't. Isolate those rabbits from the rest of your herd, though, because it can be incredibly contagious and really pass through your herd really, really quickly. A lot of times rabbits will just recover from that, no problem. Sometimes they won't. So you don't know what's going to happen exactly. And I realize you can't isolate the nursing doe from her babies right now, but get her away from all your other rabbits anyway, if you can. You don't want to pass that on. But yeah, it can be a, oh, here we go. There's more. New Mexico Dust Bunny says, it's the first time I've ever heard of this, so now instead of messing with it, I'm going to process the buck in 2 seconds for tonight's dinner, and the doe, once she's weaned, all those kits are freezer bound. Yeah, well, that's not a bad policy either. Yeah, it could, there are some things like that. Like I said, it could be transmissible to humans. It doesn't mean it is every time, because snuffles really kind of applies to a lot of different things. There's just, like, when you get sick and you say, oh, I've got a cold. Well, that means lots of different things. It could be cold, it could be a virus, and just whatever kind of virus, and we just categorize it as a cold. It's the same thing with rabbits. So yeah, depending on what they have, it may be something that you as a human could catch as well. I wouldn't worry too much about it. It's probably not going to be like deadly to you or anything like that. It'd just be like another cold or whatever. So again, it may not be bacterial. It may be virus for sure. And if it's a virus, all you can do is let it run its course. Or process them and just don't worry about it. All right, Nick says, how you doing? What's the best feed for laying, or should I just stick with high protein? Yeah, I use high protein game bird starter for all my birds from the time they hatch to the time they're processed and in the freezer. I think that high protein really does help with their egg laying. Now you can get, you could go with a lower protein, but in my opinion and my experience, they do better with a high protein, something like 25% or higher. So I just stick with game bird starter. It works fine. I don't switch it off. All right, Rick says, humbly kill raccoons in Ohio. It is frowned on to move them, maybe illegal. Well, yeah, I can see what you're saying. It's frowned on to move them if you're just going to make them somebody else's problem. I agree with that. But where I'm talking about releasing them is, it's out in the middle of nowhere. There's nobody out there. It's specifically conservation land, and but you're right. If there's no shortage of raccoons, there's no reason you have to move them. You could definitely take care of them yourself. All right, Live to Fish says, I have 4 little giant incubator running 120 eggs on. I have 4 little giants incubators running 120 eggs on each. Wow, that's a lot of eggs. Good luck with your hatch. Hope it goes well. All right, J.R. Bailey says, hey, Chris, sorry I'm late. That's okay. We don't take attendance here, and we're not going to count you tardy. Says, I've been dealing with major catastrophe. One of the court waters flooded and soaked more than half the 5-day-old whites and browns. All but one survived. Wow, you're lucky you caught it. Yeah, that can be deadly. You get your birds wet, it's almost impossible for them to warm up, especially at 5 days old. So, man, I'm sorry to hear that. Glad you caught it, though, and glad you got it taken care of. All right, where we at? Watermelon Production says, hey, Chris, how do you advertise your quail or chicks or egg sale? Mostly on Craigslist. Facebook frowns on that, so mostly on Craigslist. If I'm going to sell birds or eggs, I just advertise it on Craigslist. I don't really sell eggs very often. It just isn't worth it to me, at $3 a dozen or whatever. I mean, I will sell them if people reach out to me and they're local. I do have some viewers that are fairly local, and they'll reach out to me every once in a while, want to know if I have some eggs for sale, and I'll collect eggs up and sell them to them. No big deal. But I don't do it on a regular basis because it's just not worth the effort to me. I don't have a huge operation, so and I don't have regular customers I'm selling eggs to all the time. So I just don't worry about the eggs too much. But I do sell chicks every once in a while, especially if I have a really good hatch. I might try to sell about 10 of them just to help cover the feed costs. And those I usually advertise on Craigslist. All right, J.R. Bailey says, good news from Hatch. The last batch they sent me, the soaked batch, 17 were whites and with black spots on heads and 22 jumbo wilds. They're replacing an entire shipment and adding one. Well, that's nice to hear. Good. I know that, while we're talking about this, there's been a little bit of bad feedback about Hutch Poultry Farms. A couple of people have talked about, not getting consistent responses from them, about not getting, the shipments when they're supposed to get them. And I think those are the two big complaints that I've seen so far. So here's what I would ask you guys, let me know, if you've had a good experience or a bad experience ordering from them. So I know, because, I know, I've had some communications with Dawson about this. I know he's a good person. He means well. He's trying to do the right thing. I have no doubt about that. I don't think he's just slacking off and just not responding for whatever reason. But I think he's just probably a little overwhelmed right now with the pandemic going on. This is also the busy time of year for the for hatching, for any kind of egg supplier or bird supplier or anything like that. This is incredibly busy time of year for him right now. And, I know he's lost some staff. They're not coming into work on a daily basis because of the pandemic. I can relate to that. That's the same thing that's happening in my job. We're having a hard time keeping everybody, getting everybody to come to work the times that they're supposed to work. I understand all of those kinds of things, but at the same time, I don't want to keep recommending. Now I do have the discount code, so I want to be able to offer that for you guys, but I don't want to keep recommending if this is going to be like, 90% of the people that do business with them are having a really bad experience. Again, I don't have any doubt that, Dawson Hatch Poultry, it's a good company. They're good people. They mean well. They have good hearts, and they're trying to do good business with you guys. We may just have to be a little bit patient with them and let them kind of figure it out. I mean, I can relate to that. I've made mistakes myself. I'm not going to count them out right now, but I do just want to put that out there. I'm aware if you've had some problems. I'm aware that there have been some problems lately, but I don't really have a good feel for how widespread it is, or if it's just isolated one or two here or there that might be explained by some kind of some kind of glitch or just an oversight or something like that. Keep in mind that whenever somebody complains about, like, if you ever look up reviews about companies, you don't. Well, sometimes you see good online reviews, but typically people only talk about when they have a bad experience. They don't always talk about when they have a good experience. So let me know, again, guys, if you're having a good experience, bad experience with Hatch Poultry, what's going on there if you've ordered from them. All right. Storm Chaser Hunter Smith says, just recently got 26 Coturnix quail that are almost 6 weeks old. At what age do they normally start to lay? Usually by 8 to 12 weeks. It varies from bird to bird, but most of my birds start to lay around 8 weeks old, and then they're usually fully laying by about 12 weeks. All right. Gar says, how many quail do you need per person for a good meal compared to a chicken breast? I think that's really subjective. If you eat one whole chicken breast, and again, it depends on what size that chicken breast is, here, I'll just tell you what our family does. We usually figure about 2 birds per person. If you're going to have other things with it, potatoes and other sides, about 2 birds per person. It's not a huge meal. There's not a whole lot to them other than the breast. So, you can take that for what it's worth. If you're a big eater, you like big meals, you might go with 3 birds per person. I don't think that's going to be over, too much at all. They're not huge birds. There's not a lot to them, but yeah, hopefully that answers the question for you. All right. JR says, best news, 2 of my girls who are 6 weeks old are laying already every day, 4 eggs out of 5 days. Well, that's awesome. It's 6 weeks old. Very nice. Rhonda says, I noticed when I hated out eggs, I actually did better in spring. My summer hatch rates were terrible. Oh, when you hatched out eggs, you did better in spring. The summer hatch rates were terrible. Yeah, interesting. It could be something to do with that, especially if, maybe you have them in a room that's not well insulated, where the temperature really fluctuates a lot from night to day, or in a sunny window or something like that. I think it could definitely affect them. All right, grab another drink here. How are we doing on time? Oh, we got plenty of time. All right. Loving Life's Imperfection says, love your channel and all your information. Question, do you add anything to your water buckets to keep bacteria and other things from growing in the bird's water? No, I don't bother with it. I mean, they're mostly in the shade. I try to keep the buckets in the shade so I don't get huge amounts of algae buildup in there, but that's more or less because it restricts the water flow through the tubing and stuff like that. I don't worry about the bacteria growing in the water. I mean, it's only in there for like a week, and then I'm flushing it out and refilling it, so I don't think that that's a big concern. Not for me anyway. I've never noticed my birds having problems with it, or my rabbits for that matter. My dog prefers to go out and drink from the stale water in the little puddles or wherever it gathers in a little container here or there than he does to drink his water that's in the kitchen. It's poured out and fresh for him every day. So I don't worry about it. I think they do fine with it. All right, Gingerbeard, good evening. Says, good evening, Chris. Well, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Says, hope all is well. Could you give some advice for buck or to doe ratio? I currently have 1 buck and 5 does, but I have an upcoming buck and doe to add to the program. Well, you could do it a lot of different ways. I think it really, I'm sorry, I got distracted by another comment. We'll get to that next. But I think it really depends on how often you want to breed them. With, you said you got 1 buck, 5 does, you could breed that buck to those does every day for a week. Like 1 doe a day for a week. You might give him a little break after that, but 5 does in a week is nothing for 1 buck to be able to handle. That's fine. He could do that pretty easily. You could breed him up to 2 or 3 times a day, probably. Twice at least, maybe even 3 times a day, and still get pretty good fertility out of him. So, I think you're probably wise to go ahead and add 1 more buck, because it's always better to have 1 extra one just in case something happens. But, as far as how many you need, hopefully that kind of answers that for you. Just depends on how many you want to breed at one time. If you want to, there's a lot of factors that go into that, but you're not over the ratio at all. You could do 1 buck for 15 or 20 does if you wanted to, and you just space the breeding out. You didn't try to breed them all the same day or even all the same week. If you bred them, maybe you bred him Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and just did that every Monday, Wednesday, Friday to a different doe, then you'd be fine with 20 or even 30 does probably if you wanted to. All right. Lord Drell says, hello, Chris. Oh, wait, Roseville. That's the comment that made me laugh here. Says, hey, this is interesting. I'm trying to stay awake. It's 2:30 a.m. in Italy. Well, thank you for joining all the way from Italy, and hopefully we don't bore you to sleep. But at 2:30 in the morning, if you want to go to sleep, I can understand. I wouldn't be up at 2:30 in the morning. Hello, Chris. This is from Lord Drell. Hello, Chris. And all question, can a buck be bred to his daughter? I have a standard Rex. Yes, you can breed buck to daughter, mother to son. You don't want to breed brother and sister together, even if they're half brother and half sister. You don't want to do that. That's too close to the gene pool. But you can breed them back to their mother or back to their father. That's actually a really good practice to do in a lot of ways, because it's called line breeding, and you can really isolate traits and accentuate really good traits in your rabbits. And if you do that, it's considered it's pretty common practice. So yes, you can do it. Fred says, I got my incubator in a closet. I have a great hatch rate. Yeah, that's probably a good place to put it, is in a closet that's, fairly, like I said, consistent in temperature. Will says, said 120 eggs, quail eggs, candled last night as going into lockdown, about 50% viable. Some fertility rate as before from the same supplier. Well, just because... Excuse me, let me talk about this for just a minute, because I think I hear this a lot. Just because your eggs didn't develop doesn't mean that they weren't fertile. There could be a number of different reasons why they didn't develop. There may be hot spots in your incubator. Those eggs may be sitting in that hot spot. There could be all kinds of different things. But If you've hatched other eggs from other suppliers and gotten really good hatch rates with it, and you're consistently getting only 50% from this supplier, it does kind of lean towards maybe there's something wrong with the eggs. Who knows? I don't know what to tell you on that one exactly. There's nothing I can say for sure is what's causing it. All right, New Mexico Dust Bunny says, question for everyone. Okay. Oh, there it is. Does anyone have any home remedies or treatments for snuffles? Sorry, I split the question. Oh, that's okay. We'll get a couple people to answer for that. Again, if it's a virus, there's not much you can do. You just got to let it run its course. If it's bacterial, you can try to treat with antibiotics. Just go to a feed store and ask. But, according to, it may have been you that said that. No, I don't think it was. I don't remember. But anyway, that may be hard to find right now, too. It's hard to know without knowing what it is for sure. We'll see what some other people say, but I don't know that there's much you can do, honestly. It may be just something you have to just wait and see if it, works itself out or not. All right, Robin's Nest says, wonder if the boiled quail were soft shells after boiling because I gave my quail cider vinegar in their water. Robin and no, I don't. Wait, Robin in that's your name, Robin in Florida. Okay, no, I don't think that. I mean, that's not going to affect their eggs. You put a little apple cider in the vinegar, it's not going to affect the egg shell consistently. If you put vinegar in the water when you're boiling the eggs, it will dissolve the shells to a certain extent, so that can affect it for sure. If they're fairly young birds and they're just new to laying, they may have some thinner shells. That may be why they're softer after boiling. I really don't know. I've never had that problem myself. It's kind of interesting though. But no, giving the birds the apple cider vinegar, by the time it gets to the eggs, it's not vinegar anymore. It's been processed through them. It's not it won't do that. All right. Where are we at here? Live to Fish says, keep it hillbilly and Trump. Okay. Not that I completely disagree with you. I'm not a huge Trump supporter myself, but this isn't the place for political. I lean way more right than I do left. Let's put it that way. But this isn't the place for political stuff. Just keep it out of here. Go talk to somebody else if you want to talk political stuff. All right. JR says, I forgot to ask, can I eat eggs from medicated birds? I feed my flock purina game bird chow and it's medicated. You can. Yes, you can. That is, who was it that was talking about the treatment for COVID? Emperil. I can't remember the name for it all of a sudden. It's a hard word to pronounce. That's what is in the medicated feed. It's not really like an antibiotic or a medicated. It's just it's more or less like it's a thiamine blocker is what it is. To help prevent coccidiosis or help the birds deal with it if they do get it. It's fine. The FDA said it is fine to eat the meat from those birds or even eat the eggs from those birds. Me personally, I don't want to feed a medicated feed forever. I just kind of feel like maybe I don't know why. It's just something in the back of my head. The FDA said it's fine. There's no withdrawal period, no effect on humans, nothing. But I still prefer to not use medicated feed. That's just my personal choice. All right, Roseville says, why do some of my quail eggs have some soft spot? Usually the pointy end and the rest of the eggshell are hard. It's so brittle that it can easily break just by rubbing your finger on it. Hi from Italy. Well, that's a good question. Is your, I don't know how old your birds are. If they're older birds, like, months and months, like 6, 7, 8 months old or a year old, then that probably points to a calcium deficiency. You probably need to up your calcium percentage a little bit. Birds need about 1.5 to 2% calcium in their diet. If your calcium is running lower than that, then that can lead to really thin eggshells. Now, if you do add calcium to the diet, you're going to want to do that in the form of like crushed oyster shell or something like that. And do it on the side. Don't mix it in with their feed. They'll eat as much as they need if you give it to them and as an option on the side. It's not something that you want to mix in with their feed and make them eat. So that's a couple options. Now, if they're young birds, if they're 9 weeks, 10 weeks old, 12 weeks old, somewhere right around in there, they're just give them some time. Those are pretty common. You get some weird eggs when they first start laying. Every once in a while, even now for my older birds, I get an egg with no shell on it. And I mean, it's just the membrane in the egg. It's just one off here and there. It's not that big of a deal. Just give them some time. They'll grow out of it. All right. Maverick says, dude, love your videos. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. All right. What are we doing on time? 10 minutes left. New Mexico Dust Bunny says, about snuffles, the buck got a nasty runny nose for a while and sneezes, then it clears up. The doe has a runny nose, The rabbits are all separated, but the ones with the snuffles were all on ground. Yeah, if you have your rabbits on the ground, they're going to be much more susceptible to illnesses and things like that. But if it cleared up, that's good news. It sounds like it may be just some kind of virus that they can deal with themselves and they'll get over. No big deal. All right. Maverick says, will rabbits sell on there? I got 30 of them. Will rabbits sell on where? What are we talking about, Maverick? I'm not sure what we're talking about. If I sell rabbits, I do it on Craigslist, and it depends on your market and your area. If there's lots of people looking for rabbits, right now, I think people are kind of gravitating more towards producing their own food. So yeah, you might be able to sell some rabbits. It's probably do it on Craigslist. You can't do it on Facebook. They don't allow animal sales, but Facebook. All right. All right, Keith says, can you can low acidity food without a pressure canner? No, you cannot. A certain pH level needs to be reached before you can do water bath canning. If you can't water bath can it, the only other option is to pressure can it. And I'm not sure, you say without a pressure canner, I don't know if that maybe is because you don't have one or you just don't want to use a pressure canner. Maybe you're a little intimidated by it. They're actually pretty easy to use. I've got a video on how to use a pressure canner. You can watch it. It's nothing to be scared of. They're perfectly safe. It's no problem whatsoever. If you don't have a pressure canner, you can't afford to get one right now, you don't want to get one right now, you're just, whatever reason, you don't want to do pressure canning, you can freeze a lot of those things like, green beans and those things. Blanch them first, dip them in some boiling water for 90 seconds, 30 seconds, something like that. Take them out, put them in some ice water to stop the cooking process, and then lay them out on a flat sheet and freeze them. Then you can, flash freeze them, put them in your freezer on a cookie sheet or something flat so they don't freeze in a big block. And then you can pick those up, put them in a Ziploc, freezer bag of some kind, seal it off pretty good and throw them in your freezer. You can preserve them that way. And a lot of things freeze just fine. Corn, green beans, those things freeze just fine. I prefer to can them myself, but again, pressure canners are not that scary. It's not that big of a deal. I'm not necessarily assuming that that's the issue. I just know a lot of people that is the issue. So if that's not it, forgive me. I'm not calling you a wuss for not wanting to do a pressure canner or something. It's okay if you don't want to, if you're still a little intimidated by it. Wow, look at that tan line. I didn't even realize that until I see it in camera. Yeah, pretty dark. Actually, it looks worse in camera than it does in real life. Yeah, it's... sorry, I caught my eye. Yeah, I'm truly a redneck. Like, see, look at that. Redneck tan line down under my shirt. All right, Rick says, raccoon moving frowned here on spreading wasting disease. Love your channel, man. I don't want to be the guy. Well, hey, that's okay. I'm not necessarily right on everything. A lot of these things are my opinions. If you differ from my opinion, that's perfectly okay. I learn things from you guys just like you learn things from me. I can't be always right all the time. I mean, I could be, I guess, but no, I'm not. I'm not always right all the time. Sometimes I make mistakes, but... So you're talking about spreading wasting disease in deer? I never thought about that. That's a good point. We don't have a big problem with wasting disease around here in our deer. There's been a few cases of it, but it's not a big problem. But still, you're right. Moving raccoons might be a good way to spread it. So yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe that's not a good way to do it. All right. Verna says, oh wow, sorry so late. I ended up with a wild that had genetic problems. Brought growth on her head from that hatchery. Oh, you're talking about a quail, a wild quail that had genetic problems and had a growth on her. Interesting. That's, I'm sorry to hear that. Who knows? And from that hatchery, are you talking about hatch poultry or are you talking about a specific hatchery somewhere? I'm not sure where we're going with that exactly, but anyway, regardless of where it came from, I mean, the mutations happen. You can't blame that on the hatchery that you got it from necessarily, unless it's like 5 or 6 of them had that problem. If it's just an oddball one bird, it's just those things happen. There's nothing you can do about it. Owen says, hi, how you doing? I'm doing well, thank you. Hope you are too. Rick says, just noticed, like the shirt, man, where do you get one? Oh, the shirt, yeah, grab your balls, it's canning season. I think this came off Amazon, maybe. I'm still toying with the idea of putting some shirts up in a Teespring shop or something where you guys can go order them from. Several people have asked for them. So I'm still toying with it. I just got to find the time to do it. I've been so busy here lately, and I'm sorry I'm still not getting good at answer. I was getting better there for a little while answering comments, but I just can't can't seem to find the time to get in there and sit down and do it. And I always feel bad when I do, and I get in there and I can only answer 15 or 20 comments. And I'm like, oh, look at all those people I can't talk to. And I feel bad about it, but I'm going to try to get better at doing that. If I miss your comments, I'm sorry, guys. I'm trying to keep up. But, I got almost 60,000 subscribers and lots of messages, lots of comments coming in. And, work a full-time job. It's just hard to keep up with. But I mean to. My intentions are there. It's just not happening right now. I'll try. Verna says, but they are tasty and worth the effort. Probably talking about when I said about there's not a whole lot of meat to a quail. I think that's where we're at. So I think you were talking about Hatch poultry when you said that growth on their head, maybe. Yep, that's it. Verna said, okay, yeah, you clarifying. Hatch poultry, it was only one bird. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. Sometimes I get lost in these, but you got to realize two things is that it takes me a while to get through the comments. But also, there's a little bit of a delay from when I say something to when it actually plays on the screen. It's just lag. So, I said something, and by the time you hear it, I'm probably on, 5, 6, maybe 7 more sentences. And by that time, I've probably forgotten what I said back then. So when you respond to it, by the time I see it, I don't know what we're talking about sometimes. So if you leave a comment in response to something, you might kind of preference it, like give me a word or two to let me know that's what it is so I can keep up. I did catch on to this one, though, Verna. Thank you for clarifying for me. So you had birds from them, and you had one with a growth on its head. Yeah, okay. That could be, it could be a problem with the hatchery. I haven't heard a lot of those issues. And again, that can happen no matter where even in your own birds. You've got birds that have been great forever, and then all of a sudden you just get one weird deformed bird. It can happen. So I can't really blame that on the hatchery itself, but thank you for your feedback on that. I appreciate it. All right, Rhonda says, we have a large family. We need 20 birds for one meal, but that's when we're a family of 9. That's when we were a family of 9. Hello, we're a family of 11 now. So I'm not sure how many we'll need. Sounds like about 4 or 5 more. So, all right. Eva says, thank you. I was just wondering why you said no WD-40. I haven't been able to be on for a few weeks to ask. You've been so busy. Hey, I get it. I'm busy too. So, and that's okay. Anytime you guys, this is the best place. If you got a question you want to ask me and I'm not answering it through other means, jump on the Thursday Night Live broadcast, try to get your comment in here. I'll do my best to answer it that way. It's just tough to keep up with sometimes. All right, Stevie says, hi from North Carolina. How are we doing on time? Oh, just a couple minutes left. I got to rush through these. Hi from North Carolina. I learned a lot about quail from watching your videos. Thanks for sharing them. Thank you. I appreciate that. Mama says, don't forget to thumbs up. Thank you. J.R. Bailey, when it comes to determining if a company is good or bad, it's the response. Do they back up their guarantees with actual follow-through? So far, Hatch is stepping up to the plate. So, well, that's good to hear from you. I know a couple of people have said they haven't gotten response, like they've contacted them and they haven't responded to them. And I can't determine yet if those are, I'm not blaming anybody for that as far as the customer's end. It's not the customer's fault necessarily, but I can't figure out if it's like maybe some kind of glitch in their system. I haven't had any problems getting responses from them. I know lots of people have talked, haven't had problems getting responses from them, but it's just something I'm just checking out, just letting you guys know that I do pay attention to that kind of stuff. And I don't want to keep recommending a company if they do turn out to not have good, and it may be something we have to temporarily stop, until they get a chance. Dawson's not a very old guy. He's a younger guy, and I can understand, especially during the pandemic right now with the difficulty you're having with getting good help hired and keeping them on. It can be really tough to kind of keep up with running a business, especially, a hatching business during this time of year that's going to be incredibly busy. So I get that. I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. But I do want to know also, I want you guys to know that I pay attention, and if you're having bad results from something I'm recommending, then I pay attention to that, and I want to correct it the best I can. All right. Grinnan says, anybody have a link to buy a good thermometer for my incubator? My hover butter is awesome with 80% hatch rate, but I can't get about a 40% hatch rate out of my best for my little giant. Really any, here. That's what JR is saying. The same thing. He says, I picked up 2 decent analogs from Walmart, $7 each. Shipping rates from Amazon are weeks out, which is a non-starter for me. Yeah, just go to Walmart and pick up a couple of analog. Just check the thermometer first to make sure it goes down low enough. A lot of thermometers, meat thermometers, they start off measuring temperature at 150 degrees or 200 degrees or, well, probably not 200, but like 100 degrees. You want one that goes all the way down to 0 because you need that to be able to calibrate it. And make sure it can be calibrated too. It should have a nut on the back side of it that you turn to calibrate it. All right, Robin and Donna, I think that's what it is. Hello, my female quail got a lump on its chest that grew to where it was hard for her to walk. Processed her, and it was a sack full of feed outside of her esophagus throat. Have you ever experienced this? No, I've never experienced anything exactly like that, but that isn't that uncommon. There's a name for it. I'm trying to remember what it's called. It's like water chest or something like that, water breast maybe. I don't remember, but it's not an uncommon problem with chickens and with quail, with any kind of bird. It just happens from time to time. Nothing you need to worry about. It's not like it's going to happen to all your birds or anything like that. It'll probably be a pretty rare thing if ever happening. All right, Will says, I checked the eggs that was taken out and seems to be a fertility issue. So I think we're talking about when you had bad hatch rate and a bad fertility. It could be. But then again, it could be a, incubator thermometer, temperature issue. They just may have started developing. There may be it could be in the handling when the post office, took their time to get them to you or something like that. Could be a lot of things. I'm not saying it's not a fertility issue, but chances are it's probably not a fertility issue, but it probably does have to go with, if you put eggs on the counter in your room, in your kitchen, and it's 75 degrees and you leave them there for 2 weeks, they're probably not going to hatch and they're not going to develop at all. So it's going to look like a fertility issue. I'm not saying they did that, but if there's a delay in the shipping, maybe the post office is notorious for being slow on deliveries. That could have affected them a little bit. They may have had them in too cold of an area that, killed them off before they got a chance to develop. There could be a number of things going on there. But then again, it could be Hatch Poultry's fault. And if you've got, 2 orders from them, both of them came through that way, and you've hatched other birds from other hatcheries or whatever and had good results, it does kind of point to that. So that could be the issue. And I'm sorry you've had that issue with them off somebody I recommended. Like I said, we're going to give them a little while and see if things don't get better. All right. Oh my goodness, we're over time, guys. I did not get to everybody on this topic, and I'm sorry if this is Hope is saying I love you. Can you say Hope? There you go, Hope. You're welcome. All right, and a couple people asking for shirts. I'll see what I can do and maybe come up with a one with a slightly redneck design on it, so you guys can have that one if you want it. And if I set it up on a Teespring thing, you can order it on coffee mugs or whatever you want it on. It doesn't have to be a shirt. I'll see what I can do to set a couple of those things up and maybe try to get something up there for you guys if you want them. I got a couple other ideas for shirts that I'd like to have. Things like this kind of stuff that I'll try to get up there for you too, so it's not all just slightly redneck, logo, because it's not that great of a logo. Anyway, I got to get off here, guys. I got things to do. And got to go have dinner with the family. It's just about getting dark. So anyway, got to close this one out for tonight. Hopefully we'll see you guys again next week. Thanks for joining tonight. I appreciate it. And as always, God bless.